This evening, the topic is about how to get the best of our teenagers. And inshallah, this topic is a very hot topic for those, especially who are parents and have teenagers or about to have teenagers or have a few teenagers and a few adults in their family. I'm sure there's a lot of hot questions, hot topics that you want to touch on, and which, inshallah, we will have that opportunity after Sheikh Mohammad Trad talk. So without further ado, I would like to go to the next program, which should start our program with recitation of the Quran. Inshallah, Brother Abdul Rahman will be reciting the Quran, Surah As-Safat, ayah 100 to 111. Brother Abdul Rahman, if you are ready, please commence the tilawah. Fadal.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب هب لي من الصالحين فبشرناه بغلام حليم فلما بلغ معه السعي قال يا بني إني أرى في المنام أني أذبحك فانظر ماذا ترى قال يا أبت افعل ما تؤمر ستجدني إن شاء الله من الصابرين فلما أسلما وتله للجبين وناديناه أن يا إبراهيم قد صدقت الرؤيا إنا كذلك نجزي المحسنين إن هذا لهو البلاء المبين وفديناه بذبح عظيم وتركنا عليه في الآخرين سلام على إبراهيم كذلك نجزي المحسنين إنه من عبادنا المؤمنين صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakallah to Brother Abdul Rahman for the beautiful recitation of the Quran. May Allah give you the fadilah for reciting it, and all of us who have listened attentively to it, may Allah also give us hasanat. And may I remind every one of you, including myself, that we are in the most blessed 10 days of the year. We are in the 4th or 5th of Dhul Hijjah. And in a few days' time, we will meet the next big Eid of the Islamic calendar, which is Eid al-Adha. So inshallah, even our gathering tonight to seek knowledge will also be given hasanat many folds by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Before we go to the main program, I would like to get everybody to know a bit more about who is Human Initiative. And we have prepared a short video. So enjoy the video, and we will find out a bit more about who is the host of this evening's program. You got the video ready? Excellent. So that's introduction for those of you who may be attending this program for the first time. The Human Initiative has been around in Australia for several years now, and in the recent tragedy of this nation, we've seen Human Initiative take a big part to try to relieve those in need. Even in Ramadan, not this year, but the previous year, I think the youth participated in providing food for the homeless. And there's also the recent COVID appeal. So there was fund raised to help with the frontline workers of health to provide PPE or personal protective equipment. So ongoing support for all these great programs through Human Initiative, inshallah, will get its way to those in need. Excellent presentation. Now, inshallah, we will continue with our next program. And this is, feels like the Sheikh has been kept in the backyard, in the background for a minute. Let me give you a bit of an introduction. Sheikh Mohammad Trad is a very close friend of mine as well. And he's been doing a lot of da'wah in Sydney, and specific focus is with the youth. I've known him being one of the youth lecturer or program to run program with the youth at the Fitia Centre in Yaguna in New South Wales. But his career started off, he started off as studying at Jinan University in Sharia in Lebanon. And then he's got a very great background that I think really suits the youth and for those parents who are trying to understand what is youth is all about. I'll just give you a few of the highlights of his background. So he studied Sharia at Jinan University, and after that, he also worked at Microsoft as a consumer product advisor. So he knows a lot of the games that your kids may be playing, and my kids play, like Minecraft, and conducting workshop on how to use products from Microsoft. And most recently, he's also a counselor or a religious support officer at the correctional center or prisons. So he helps assessment of inmates with the risks to the community with rehabilitation and providing theological support for intervention. So he's in the front line of maybe youth, juvenile, and Muslims in difficult situation in prisons. So he's got a lot of those experience that he could share with us. And he's also been involved in a lot of teaching around the communities in Sydney. In the LMA, he's done teaching at Hornsby. He's also been interacting with the youth at Iqra a few times, including in Ramadan with the Iqra Foundation in Sydney, Australia. He's now also involved with the masjid at Arncliffe. If I'm not mistaken, that's the Malaysian community, Malay community. So, and his passion is with the youth. So, inshallah, this evening we will hear a topic that he will bring in relation to how to get the most out of the youth, with the background story of our beloved Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and his son Ismail alayhi salam. Without further ado, we will have about 30 minutes of 40 minutes from now until 8:15 is the talk. For those of you who have any questions, and if you are new to using Zoom, there is an icon at the bottom of your screen. So it's Q&A. So post your questions there. So inshallah, what we'll do is we'll capture all these questions. And then after the talk, we will start to go through and trying to answer them. So inshallah, we will have a lot of knowledge, inshallah, to gain in the next 45 minutes. And then after that, any burning questions or desire that you need to ask the Sheikh, please capture it in the Q&A. And as you could drop it there as we go along. So as you have them, you can drop it in the question section of the Q&A, and then we will try to respond to those questions after the talk. Inshallah, I will give the floor to my brother Sheikh Mohammad Trad. Tafadhal mashkuran.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Just a bit of an apology to begin with. Tried to get one of the backgrounds sorted for this, but been struggling to get it on. So I'll just start with one of the backgrounds that's available via Zoom. I hope that's okay with everyone. I'm not
Looks
actually
like you're in San Francisco, Sheikh.
Yeah, I'm not really in San Francisco. So khairan, inshallah.
I think that's actually good.
You think
so? We have like global
you're in Sydney, mashallah. Your location looks more accurate. But alhamdulillah. خيرا. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. O Allah, teach us all, benefit us and benefit us from what you have taught us and increase us in knowledge. Ameen. اللهم بارك لنا في جمعنا هذا. O Allah, bless this gathering. Ameen. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. O Allah, help us, make us from those who, when we hear any speech, that we follow the best of that speech. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also to help us to make the most of these blessed 10 days that we are in at the moment. As the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is reported to have said, "Ma min ayyamin al-amal as-salih fihim ahabba ila Allah ta'ala min hadhihi al-ayyam." That there are no days where good deeds are more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than in these days. And this doesn't just mean, okay, we pray a bit more, we give charity a bit more, and that includes the range of a'mal salihah, the range of good or righteous deeds. If we can increase wherever we can, these are the days where these a'mal are most beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Amma ba'd. I want to begin by thanking everyone who was involved in organizing this. Inshallah, it will be of benefit. Thank you everyone who is in attendance too, taking time out of your day. This is indeed a very important topic, and it's a topic that requires a consistent attention and consistent effort, because the effort that is being put forward that pulls people away from the deen and pulls people away from the qualities, the positive good qualities that we have grown up learning to have, like that effort is consistent as well. So we need to make this consistent effort to bring people back and to hold on to people and help them to figure out how to hold on to their deen and how to hold on to these positive qualities that we learn through our deen, of course. So that's inshallah it's something that we'll continue to work on. Some of you will be looking right now and saying, "Oh, this guy looks younger than me. So what's he doing talking to me about how to raise kids?" Or what a good practice to do in relation to this. So I thought I'd give a bit of an introduction about myself and Brother Luqman, Jazakallahu khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. You gave a fairly detailed description, but I'll give another summary, trying to focus a bit more on my background, my personal, professional, and my education background that makes me somewhat well suited to talk about this topic. Don't claim to know everything, and of course we all continue to learn and grow as time goes on, but inshallah it might put people's hearts at a bit of ease, knowing that I actually come from a place of a bit of experience. So we've got our family. Let's just start quickly with that I grew up in a very, very large family, and that's both immediate and extended family, and I spent time around them growing up. This was here in Australia, and then even when I went back overseas to study Sharia, I spent time with even more of my family. So I saw people around me, growing up with me and growing up around me. So we also have that even when I was studying in Lebanon, for 5 years, my next door neighbors, I saw, and I observed and I interacted with my neighbors as they were growing up. So that's a bit of the personal part of it. In terms of the education, I went overseas after completing my HSC to study a degree in Sharia and Islamic studies. In relation to that degree, one of the great things about our university was that it was important to them that we are well equipped to handle the range of challenges that a sheikh might face in his duties. And so it wasn't for us that we were just learning the fiqh and the tafsir and the hadith. We were also studying, we had compulsory subjects in sociology, in psychology, in comparative religion, in relation to different cultures, and studying the Arab culture in particular and Islamic culture in particular, studying certain aspects of history, Islamic economics, even law. And so our university made it abundantly clear that we need to have an awareness. Of course, we didn't become experts in each one of these subjects, but that we have an awareness of each of these fields because they're important tools for the Shaykh, especially living in these days. So that was throughout my degree, but also my honors thesis. It was written in Arabic. It was الشخصية الإسلامية في القرن الحادي والعشرين, the Muslim in the 21st century. So it was considering, the social circumstances and situations and things that happen in a person's life in this day and age, and how a Muslim can try to uphold their deen and uphold their Islamic practice in this day and age. And the way that I broke it down was, I broke it down in terms of a person's relationship with the things around them, or with whatever is it around them and in themselves. So the person's relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator, the person's relationship with themselves, like how do I treat my body, how do I look after myself, the mind, body and spirit. Of course, all three of those are very important. The person's relationship with the people around them, the person's relationship with their environment. And so I took each of these topics and I worked on those, and I put forward the Islamic best practices in relation to these things. So that education. Also, after I came back from Lebanon, I did a postgrad degree in teaching. So I do have a teaching degree, and I've had some experience teaching in both primary and high school. In terms of work, yes, brother Luqman, he mentioned, I have worked with a few different organizations teaching Arabic religious studies, but also have done a lot of youth work here and there. I was the imam in Hornsby, in the Hornsby area, which is in North Sydney, for about 1.5 years. And I've been imam in my local area for maybe 5-6 years now. So it's been a while, alhamdulillah. I've had a lot of experiences with varying circumstances. So sometimes we're dealing with the youth directly. Sometimes parents are coming in and talking to us, say, look, please, we need someone to talk to our kids. We need someone to go sit down with them and see what the issue is, and how they can maybe help them. So we did have that as well. And yes, as Brother Luqman mentioned, I do sit down with people who are in jail. So these are people who, for varying reasons, have ended up in jail. And subhanAllah, one of the interesting things is observing through discussions with them and learning about their history, just what their relationship was with their parents and what their relationship was with their immediate and extended family. It gave me a lot of insights, alhamdulillah. And so inshallah, I'm looking to share the results of all these experiences and the education with all of you, inshallah ta'ala. And of course, the time that we have isn't going to do it justice, but I've tried to make it a bit concise and some points that we can easily take away with us, inshallah. And one of the things I'm going to mention this right at the end as well, but I'll mention it now also, is that we should all remember that we're not alone in this. So if you have your kid or your kids, don't think that this is your job alone and you're fighting against all of these problems and all of these issues and all of these things that are pulling your child in whatever direction, and then you have to face it alone. You don't have to face it alone. And so we want to try and build the sense of community and society between us. And inshallah, this is part of it too. So inshallah, things you'll take away from this talk tonight will be beneficial to you and beneficial to your kids. And I'm happy for a discussion to continue afterwards if anyone would like to. I think the chat here will remain open, and I'm happy to answer questions, inshallah. So that's the first part, which is just the introduction, kind of. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, look, we're going to look at 3 important points today. All right, so to help everyone remember, if you've got writing material in front of you, you got your computer opened up or your phone or whatever, it's something you can write down so you can keep in mind. And these are like your anchor points, because a lot of the discussion today, or a lot of the talk today, sorry, will be around these 3 points. And so you remember the points, inshallah, you'll remember what we've spoken about. The first one, people will learn from what they witness you do and say, rather than what you just tell them to do. So again, I'll say it, people will learn from what they witness in you. So they see you doing something a particular way. You might, if you understand that it's wrong and you tell them, no, you've got to do things in a different way, they'll learn more from what you're doing. If they see you talking to someone in a particular way, they're going to learn to behave in that way and to speak in that way, regardless of what you tell them to do. And I'll explain that a bit more. But really what it comes down to is there is no comparison between you being an example and you just telling someone what to do. And of course, our example in that is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we'll get into that, inshallah ta'ala. So the first one is people learn from what you do. The second point is your children will change. They will change. They're not going to remain your beautiful, young, innocent, cute, adorable babies. They're going to go through a lot of changes, and it's very important that we adapt the way we interact with them to those changes that occur within them. So I'll be talking about that, inshallah, too. So your children will change. That's point number 2. Point number 3, experience changes people. Experience changes people. And this might sound like it's really the same as number 2, but it's quite different. And I'll get into the detail when I get up to this particular point. But experience does change people. And subhanAllah, there's a saying in Arabic, I'll mention this one now. Personally, I believe it's highly exaggerated, but there is also at the same time truth to the saying, and I believe you'll all understand what I'm saying or where I'm coming from when I actually mention the saying itself. So the saying in Arabic is "Akbar minka biyawm, afqah minka ba'am." So older than you by 1 day, more understanding than you, or more wise than you by a whole year. So you have a day on a person and you have a lot more wisdom and understanding over them. Like I said, I think it's somewhat exaggerated, but I think the point and the lesson in it is very clear, and that it's telling us that experience helps people to grow. So those are the 3 points. Number 1, people learn from what you do. Number 2, your children will change. And number 3, experience changes people. So we're going to focus on these 3, inshallah ta'ala. So starting with number 1, where is it? Okay, sorry, I think I got them a bit out of order. Okay. So let's start with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, Sayyidah Aisha, she was asked about the akhlaq of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she said, "Kana khuluquhu al-Quran." His akhlaq was that of the Quran. So he sallallahu alaihi wasallam is our example and he's the best of examples. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. And there is indeed for you in the Messenger of Allah a great example. So he wasn't just telling people how to have good akhlaq, what they should do, how they should not get angry, how to show respect to the young, to the elders, and to show mercy towards the younger people. He wasn't just telling them; he was showing them. And this is why when I sit down with a lot of these young inmates, so a lot of the young people who are in jail, one of the things that I try to lead with is a discussion around the seerah, the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is, of course, with the inmates who are of a Muslim background. And you'll often find that a number of these young inmates, once they get to jail, they start to identify a bit more with their faith, with their religion, and they want to try and learn a bit more. So they'll try to understand the fiqh, understand the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is good and it's important. But what happens is they fall short because their akhlaq, their character hasn't changed. So they go through this process, they learn how to pray, they learn how to pray well. So you'll find that a lot of them, I don't know if there are any exceptions actually, will tell me that they get up to pray tahajjud. So how many of us get up to pray tahajjud, subhanAllah? They say they get up to pray tahajjud and they're memorizing the Quran, so they're learning these things, but there's something really missing. The thing that got them into jail has to do with their character, the way they interact with others. And so they're learning the fiqh, a bit of the fiqh, but they're not learning the akhlaq. And that's I think is a mistake. And so one of the things that we put forward is that it's great and you should continue to learn the fiqh. The fiqh teaches you what to do. The seerah shows you how to do it. It shows you how to implement it. The Prophet ﷺ, he was his akhlaq was that of the Quran. He showed us how to live our lives as practicing Muslims. And we need to be examples for the people around us. People are going to learn from what we do, like I said. And so to bring this to a more practical sphere for all of us, right? Because a lot of the people attending today will be parents, and all of us at some point were children. Where like our parents were around, and we had interactions with our parents. I tell you, if your parents are alive, it doesn't matter how much you try to emphasize the importance of being nice to your parents, with your kids, so that they be good to you and respectful to you and don't backchat to you. But then if they see that you're backchatting with your parents, and they see that you don't have patience for your parents, they see that you're trying to avoid your parents, they see all of this, I tell you that is much more influential on the young person than whatever you tell them, than anything you tell them. What they observe in your relationship with your own parents is much more influential. And that's what this point is about. And it's what, I really hope everyone takes this away with them. We need to model the behavior we want our children to see. So that's within the first point. I do want to talk a bit more about this point because there's actually a few kind of like sub points within it. So one of them is we have to model the behavior we want them to see. A second point is that we need to try to preserve, the peace of the household. It is very detrimental for a parent to speak negatively of the other parent to their children. You lose respect. You lose respect for one or both of your parents. And that is not helpful for when so the child will lose respect for one or both of their parents, and it's not helpful for them when they get into strife or when they start to kind of like drifting away, because they don't view the family life or the parents as something that's solid, something that's stable, something that they can keep looking up to. We grow up, and we grow up admiring our parents. Like as young kids, we admire our parents. the ones that work, they go out, they put effort in, they put that hard work in, and they come back and they can afford that. They can afford the food that they put on the table. They can afford the clothes that we buy and the things that we get. And when they take us out to different places, we grew up admiring just the amazing things that they can do. So we don't want our children to lose that in either parent. If there's a disagreement between parents, it shouldn't happen in front of children. And don't bring your children into your battles. So if I had a problem with my wife, I won't go telling my children, oh, look at what she's done and look at this, to try and get them on my side. Because then you're still raising your kids. So I think that's also, it's a very, very important message we need to get across. Don't talk negatively about your partner. And that is that's in relation to speaking directly about the partner, but it's also, it can also be in relation to talking about your circumstances and your situation. And so we see in the story of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam, where, as most of you will know who have learnt about his life, he didn't spend too much time with his son Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam. So he would be in another land, and he would at times come and visit and spend time from time to time. And one of the times was when Sayyidina Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam was a bit older, and he was married. And Sayyidina Ibrahim came to visit his son alayhi salatu wasalam, and he came to the house. He found that Sayyidina Ismail was not there, and Sayyidina Ismail's wife was there. And I'm paraphrasing this story, like the story is in the hadith, but I'm paraphrasing the story. I just want to try and get the gist of it, the important points. And he asked about his son, about Ismail, and she said he's not there. And she said, okay, and how's your living? How's your circumstances? And so she described very bad living circumstances. So Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam's advice for his son was that he should consider a new wife. The next time Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam visited, and Ismail had divorced his wife and had married another woman. He again found that Sayyidina Ismail was not there, was not home. And his new wife was there. And so he asked about their living circumstances, their living situation. And she mentioned them in a very positive light. She said, and she praised Allah, she showed gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and she said that they are in khair, that they are in goodness. And even like in a bit of detail, he asked what kind of food that they had to eat, what kind of drink that they drank. And so he asked about this, and she mentioned it, like I said, in a positive light. That has a big impact on the way your children view the living circumstances growing up. And I say this coming from a situation where we weren't very wealthy, and we didn't have a lot of the luxuries. But when I look back at my living situation now, I feel like there was a lot of khair, there was a lot of goodness in it. Even the times that were difficult, even the times where we might have struggled, there was a lot of goodness in it, and it made us stronger and it made us better for it. So the reason why I mention that is because when we look and consider our circumstances, so if you're sitting and listening to this talk now and saying, actually, well, what if our circumstances really are bad? How's that going to make a difference for us to pretend that they're good? Actually, we learn from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that for the Muslim, like nothing is truly bad. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he is reported to have said, عَجَبًا لِأَمْرِ الْمُؤْمِنِ إن كل أمره له فيه خير وما ذاك إلا للمؤمن إن أصابته سراء شكر فكان خيرا له وإن أصابته ضراء صبر فكان خيرا له. He said, I'm amazed at the state of the believer. Indeed, everything that befalls him, there is good in it for him, or her, of course. And that is not for any other than the believer. If something that pleases him, the sarra comes from surur, like something that brings you happiness. So if something that pleases him befalls him, he is grateful. And so it becomes good for him. So even if you look at the wording of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we know that he was daqiq, he was very precise in his wording, that even the good thing that we perceive to be good, that brings us happiness, it brings us pleasure, it only becomes good for us when we show gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we show gratitude to people who may have been involved in us achieving that thing that pleases us. And the second part of the hadith, وَإِنْ أَصَابَتْهُ ضَرَّاءٌ, and if something that harms him befalls him, he is patient, and so it becomes good for him. So we want to learn to have this positivity in our lives, and it rubs off really, really well on our children. And we need to learn to see the goodness, even if we have little, even if we feel like we don't have much, and especially compared to the things we see on TV, the personalities we see online. We shouldn't compare ourselves like that. And Abu Dharr radiallahu anhu, he in one of the hadith, he said, "Awsani khalili bi khisalin min al-khayr." He said, my Khalil, my close friend, and he's referring to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, has advised me for a number of good things. And the first two that he mentioned, he said, "An anzura ila man duni, wa la anzura ila man fawqi." To look towards who has less than me, and not look towards who has more than me. We will all find that we are in some kind of ni'mah, in some kind of blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So someone asked me a few days ago, are you rich, right? And talking to me online, are you rich? And so I looked at the question and I thought to myself, I want to give them an answer, but I don't want to give them the answer that they're expecting. And so I said, look, if rich means that whenever I'm hungry, I have what I need to satiate my hunger, then I'm rich. If it means that I have, anytime I get thirsty, I have what I need to quench my thirst, that means I'm rich. If I can meet my spiritual needs, I need to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm rich. So we can all afford to look at our situations more positively. And it comes back to, of course, that advice that we don't want to give our children negative opinions of our spouse. We are the first people to, usually the parents are the first people to ruin a child's view of their other parent. So we want to try our best not to do that, inshallah. When our kids, in the sense of our kids growing up, and we want to wanting to make sure that there is no split between the children and the parents in terms of culture, in terms of deen, in terms of their connection and spending time with each other. We want to make sure that the parents, in the view of the children, they hold them in high regard. And like I said, the parents are the first ones to influence this. I don't recall what time I started, so I tend to go a little bit over time, so please forgive me if I do.
Okay, Sheikh, we have so far 15 minutes, just over 15 minutes, so we have another half an hour.
Another half an hour? Okay, that's good. So, all right. I'll try and summarize the rest of this point so I can get into the next two, inshallah. So children are generally easily swayed in relation to this. So don't involve your children in your battles, like in summary, with the other parent, and try to mention them in the positive light so they can maintain that good relationship. At the same time, I'll touch on this very briefly now, but I can a bit more later. Is that, where is it? Sorry. Yep. So children are usually highly attuned to what is adl and what is dhulm. So what is considered fair and just, and what is considered unfair and unjust. And so we need to be really careful with that. So it's kind of like, and I was trying to find a good example to give in relation to this. But you can, I remember myself, when I was in primary school, the first time I noticed one of my teachers go out for a cigarette. It's like this big betrayal. You hold your lower primary, of course. And to find out that they do something like that, especially especially in primary school, they're teaching you all your subjects, right? So, they're teaching you about the environment, they're teaching you about your health and all of that kind of thing. There's that, of course. And then there's also one of the things that can push your children away is if they feel that there's a lot of unfairness going on. And I know this is a hard one to deal with. And when people look at fairness and unfairness, especially with children, they're usually only thinking about money. But it's not just about money. It's about the time you spend with them. It's about the effort that you put into sorting things out for them, sorting out their affairs and things like that. It's about what they notice. So one of your children might notice that you're spending all these happy and enjoyable times with their sibling, but when they're spending time with you, it's all you're yelling at them, you're showing that you're having issues with what they're doing and all of that kind of thing. We can have issues, and we can lecture our children about things that they are doing wrong, but we still need to work on maintaining the relationship. So there also needs to be the positive stuff that's going on there, and that's an important point too. So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us with all of that. I'm going to move over to the second point now, but of course we can always come back. And we can always discuss more, and I can look at questions, inshallah. Just to give everyone a bit of an idea, I actually have low vision, so I notice there's a few kind of like passages in the text chat. I can't really see them unless I get real close, so apologies if anyone's addressing me directly there. So the second point that we have is your children will change. And I'm going to give you a few examples of how they're going to change. Some of them appear to be quite obvious, but I think it's important that we're aware of them. But also it's important that we're aware that these are only examples, and there are numerous ways that they will change. So don't get too surprised, don't get too shocked. And it's like I said at the beginning of the talk, they're not going to be adorable, cute, sweet and innocent children for the entirety of their life, not even for the entirety of the time they're with you. Because we see, of course, that children now, they're getting married later and later. And so I think it's really important that we're aware of this particular point here. Yeah. Okay. So the first one I'll start with kind of like a bit less, one that's a bit less confronting. And that's in terms of tahara, purification. So how will my children change? When they're 4, 5, 6 years old, we're teaching them how to make wudu, right? And that is sufficient for them because they're not of an age where they need to do ghusl. But see, as they get closer to the age that they need to do ghusl, our relationship kind of changes with them a little bit. And they become a bit more resistant, and we notice changes going on with them. But here's a question. Are we putting the same effort to teach them how to do proper ghusl as we did to teach them how to make wudu? I think this is it's a vital question because I've heard of young people growing up, they become adults, they've gone through that change, and you teach them about ghusl, and this is like they've already reached bulugh, they've already reached puberty for 5 or 6 years ago. And you teach them about ghusl, and it turns out that we're doing it wrong. It turns out that we're missing something. And so we learn that in ghusl that you have to wash your entire body, everything. And the sunnah of that is, of course, you wash, you remove any dirt, like first of all, any najasa, anything that's considered impure, anything that might prevent the water from reaching your skin. And then you wash your private parts, and then you wash your body from top to bottom, and favoring the right before the left, of course. So, and that includes your hair. And so I have examples of young women who, they reach puberty. So what's going to happen? They're going to go through their menstrual cycle, and at the end of their menstrual cycle, they need to do the ghusl. And at times they wouldn't wash their hair because we know women don't wash their hair every time they go into the shower. because of course it's a lengthy process if you have long hair. So they're missing this part of their ghusl for how many years? And of course we know that without tahara, without the purification, our salah is not accepted. So this is an important matter, and this inshallah is a good a gate or entry to this particular topic, because one, I think it's very, very relatable, and two, it's kind of like the soft first point before we get into the more tricky, more difficult ones, the ones that can be confronting. So we need to make sure, and this is even with regards to our sons, because of course they can get into a state of janaba as well, of the major ritual impurity. And so when they do that, do they know what they need to do? Or do they assume that they just need to make wudu? Or if our children have grown up, and like we know that some hair treatments these days, they tell you don't wash your hair. Don't wash your hair after it. Well, you know what? If you're not going to wipe over your hair or wash your hair when you're doing ghusl, then your purification is not valid, and then your salah is not valid. So this is something that our kids need to learn, especially when they get to the appropriate age for that. So that's that first point, the purification. Second point is that humans have physiological needs, and we can compare this to our own needs. And then we came to a point in our lives, in our transition from childhood to adulthood, where we are, we are feeling certain urges, certain desires. Desires to be close to someone of the opposite gender, to have a relationship maybe, to be intimate with someone of the opposite gender. So we have these urges. And so they're normal. For you to assume, for any parent to assume that their child, that's not happening with their child, that if they're correct, that means there's something wrong with their child. Because that's normal. It's normal that once they get to a certain age, once they reach puberty, it's all part of the process, that they're going to have these needs. And they're going to feel these urges. So what are we doing to address these urges? I mean, it used to be that it wouldn't take people too long after puberty before they're thinking about marriage. And they're deciding to get married. They're looking at who's going to be their spouse. And that, guess what? That meets that need. It meets that physiological need for intimacy. But as we know, like in the past decades, that age has become later and later. And these days you hear about people who are in their mid-20s, late 20s. They're saying, "Oh no, like I'm not ready to get married yet. I still have a lot planned that I want to do," because they think that their life ends once they get married. Which maybe for some people it does, but it shouldn't. Like, the point is that it shouldn't end once you get married. And one of the things that one of our mashayikh used to tell us, that to have the idea that you should start your life once you've already reached your goals, achieved all your goals, that's the wrong idea. And he was talking about marriage at that point. People thinking that, oh yeah, I need to have a house sorted, I need to have a car sorted, I need to be making X amount of money, all these things sorted in my life before I think about marriage. That's very wrong, because we're still trying to hold on to our deen. Like we are a people, and of course everyone who's attending here, of course, like, why are you taking time on your Sunday evening? Because we're trying to hold on to our deen, and we would love that for our children as well. So a person who's trying to hold on to their deen, the haram is not an option for them. Getting into a relationship, finding intimacy with someone outside of marriage, that's not an option for us. It's haram. It's forbidden. So people who don't have Islam, or people who in their mind it's fine, it's okay to get into these relationships outside of marriage, that's how they solved it for themselves. So they're delaying marriage, but they solved this need, this physiological need, by getting into those relationships before marriage. But we don't do that. We don't do that. So what's our solution there? The first point is that they have these needs. We can't deny it. And if they don't have these needs, we should probably take them to a doctor, because that's normal. It's normal part of the human development. Okay. Number two is that we don't accept haram for ourselves or for our children. And at the same time, we can't expect them to keep bottling up these urges, because what happens is you're going to end up in a, mental stress, physical stress. So the advice in relation to these two pieces of advice, I mean, after, of course, the acknowledgement and the acceptance that our children will change. And I tell you why a lot of why in secular schooling are they teaching sex education from younger ages these days? Because they are aware that children are getting involved in these kinds of acts. They are aware that they are. They can't stop it. They are aware that they are, so therefore we might as well educate them about it. So your child is not going to remain that sweet, innocent person forever. Keep that in mind. So what are we going to do about it? One, be aware. Two, it's not, having the urges isn't haram. It's acting upon the urges in a haram way, in a forbidden way, that's the haram. Okay, so from that approach, we want to instill in our kids a desire to get married. This is a very, very important point. I'm seeing with a lot of young Muslims today, it's not on their mind. It's at the back of their minds, and you know what happens? They get into their 30s. They get to a point where they realize, their biological clock is ticking. They realize, oh, what's happening? I'm going to get old and I don't have kids yet. And then they're going to try and get into the relationship and get things sorted. First of all, you're not offering the best of yourself to the relationship. Second of all, what's happened there is you're putting yourself at a great disadvantage. You're putting yourself at a great disadvantage. So we want to, inshallah, instill in our kids that desire to get married, teach them about it, teach them when they get to an age where we understand, they've reached puberty, we understand they're going to have these urges, they're going to have these physiological needs that we're taking, I don't like to use the word control, but I'll use it anyway. So we're taking control of that narrative, and we're the ones who are educating our children in relation to it. And one of the sheikhs that I spend time with now, and like we study certain books together. One of the things that he pointed out when we were in discussion on this topic is that actually, what is in our culture? What's in our culture is that when when we're dealing with our children, especially once they get to a certain age, they make dua for them for marriage. They make a marriage-related dua for them. And that's how they show their appreciation to their kid, and of course their kid, because you don't have to be very explicit in relation to this all the time, but their kid knows, and their kid, in their mind, they want to be able to settle down with someone, be able to have that intimacy with someone, and so it makes you happy that your parent wants this for you, and your parent's going to try and help you with this. And so the second part of this, again, being aware of time, is that we don't want to put unnecessary obstacles in the way of people getting married. And so, of course, if there's anything haram involved, yes, we stand in the way. But if everything in it is halal, and it appears the other person, like the person that your child is interested in getting married to, is a decent, upstanding person, then we want to make the journey towards marriage easier and not harder. And even when I was giving my talk about the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah a few days ago, that one of the advices I gave, I said, this is amal salih that you can do. You know someone in your community who's trying to get married. There's a few obstacles, a few things they haven't met yet. Help them to get married. That's an amal salih. That's a righteous deed that you can do. So that's a second example in terms of your children will change. Third example is your children are going to have money. It used to be, decades ago, that children wouldn't have the kind of money that they can do damage to themselves with. Now they do. I still remember in year 9, the first time some of my friends wanted to go and try some drugs. I still remember that time. These days, your children will have the money they need to harm themselves. And so we need to educate our children about how to use that money, how to use it wisely. A lot of people overlook this. Like, I don't see many people at all actually trying to address this particular issue. And that's with regards to money. But you know what? When I was first bringing up this particular topic, I realized that, you know, it's not just money. Even access to information, access to the internet, access to the TV, there's access to things in the community. You know, some of the haram is actually free. Some of these forbidden things that will harm you are actually free and actually quite easy to achieve or to get access to. So we need to be aware of that. We need to increase the education of our children, and we need to try and get on top of that, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, so the last one within this point. The final one within this point, it's a broader one. And I think if you're going to take anything from this point, apart from the title, of course, which is your children will change, take this one. Your children will want more from their lives than just what you've imagined for them. I'll say that again. Your children will want more from their lives than just what you've imagined for them. So you might have an idea in your mind of a particular career, particular marks at school, you know, particular lifestyle choices and whatnot. It's not always going to be the same as what your children want. They're going to keep developing, and they're going to find other things enjoyable, other things that they're drawn to. It's important we're aware of this, and it's important we look at it in a way that, okay, is this thing they're interested in, does it benefit society or does it harm society? Is it halal or is it haram? You know, we need to change it. We need to change the way we look at it from just what I would like for them to rather the framework should be if it's halal or haram, if it's harmful or beneficial, things along those lines. Because it's another cause of disconnect. It can be another cause of disconnect. And you know what? Maybe the thing that they want could make a huge positive impact, could have a huge positive impact on society. And you just weren't aware of it as yet, or you haven't picked up on the the things that they're really passionate about and they're really good at. I'm going to leave that second point there, inshallah. The third point. The third point, and like this comes from a lot of the experiences I've seen, some of the experiences I've had, and some of the experiences that people have shared with me. And this is that experience changes people. You might have your kid, you're growing up with your kid, you feel like you're doing everything right. You feel like you're giving them the right kind of awareness, you know, about all of these things that are changing with them, about all the haram that's within reach, and how to combat the haram and all of that kind of stuff. You're giving them all that education, and everything seems all right. You know, everything should be all right for all intents and purposes. You know, you're taking them with you to the masjid. They're attending talks with you, but you still feel like actually no, there's something wrong. You still feel like they're going off the rails. Like at school, the teachers are complaining about them. You know, they're not performing. They don't want to perform. They're hanging out with the wrong kinds of people. So here's a piece of advice that inshallah will help in relation to this. And that is that experience changes people. And this happened so I first started like looking into this and considering this maybe 4 years ago when I was teaching at a school. It was an Islamic school. And on one of the days I was sitting down in the afternoon and chatting with a young man who was in year 11 or 12. And he appeared to be, mashallah, like doing really, really well. And like a very responsible, mature young man. And like other teachers would speak of him well. Students kind of to a degree looked up to him. And so I was sitting down and having a chat with him, and he said, you know what, I was not always like this. He said, I was, you know, I would never do my work at school or at home. I was getting into a lot of trouble with the teachers. My parents were getting fed up with me. And so like that was his situation. And his parents, they weren't sure, what are we going to do? So one day his dad decided, he said to his son, he said, you know what? You don't want to learn? that's fine. You come and work with me in the school holidays. You don't want to work, you got to provide, provide some kind of benefit to the people around you. Come and work with me in the holidays. And his father was a laborer. I think if I remember correctly, he worked in construction. And so he went with his dad. The young man, he wants to prove that he doesn't want school, he doesn't need school. Went with his dad. That 2 weeks taught him the lesson. That 2 weeks working with his dad helped him to appreciate what his dad goes through. Helped him to appreciate that, you know what, maybe if his dad was more, like, worked more, put more effort into his education, that his dad wouldn't be tiring himself as much to make this money. That helped him gain that appreciation. And so things changed for him after that. He realized, actually, no, I'll go to school rather than putting myself through all of that torture. And of course, it wasn't the physical torture, of course. I just thought I'd caveat that. So that experience had an effect on him. You're taking your children to see what you do, what you get up to, or having them at some point or in some way witness what you do. And this touches on, like, this ties in really nicely with the last piece of advice on the previous point, because we're talking about they'll get to a point in their lives where they want more than just what you've imagined, what you've pictured for them. And so this touches on that too. And so when they experience these things, they'll start to grow, they'll start to mature. You know, they see the effort that you're putting in for them. So that's one, getting them to see what you do and even participate in what you do if you can, if you're able to do that. So, like, for instance, for me, I can't take a child with me into the jail and have them sit down with inmates. I can't do that. But have them see what you do. Another part of this is for us to give them some responsibility. And I don't mean like as a 5 or 6 year old, you give them like this responsibility that's bigger than them. But what I mean is when they get to a certain age, you see there's an opportunity to test them. You can even say to your child, you know, look, this is a big test for you. See if I can rely on you. You know, see if I can put my trust in you. Children will like that. So they become kind of like your partners rather than just, you know, these young kids that are an empty vessel, and it's your obligation to fill this vessel on your own. So do that. And this is your way of teaching them as well, guiding them through understanding these responsibilities and how to deal with them and how to manage them, how to be successful with them. So help them to give them some responsibilities, and they'll start developing the feeling of responsibility. We want that. We want that, inshallah ta'ala. And so just kind of like to bring that together. You know, kids who are always, you know, just in the video games, or who are just, you know, like, quote unquote, living a sheltered life, or spending most of the time with their friends, or, you know, or they're receiving anything that they want, like any of their desire. You know, they want a PlayStation, they get it. They want, you know, they want the latest game that's been released, they get it. They want some kind of sporting equipment, they get it. They're not getting a taste for the real world. The real world is somewhat unforgiving, and we want them to get a bit of a taste for that, and it will help them to grow, inshallah ta'ala. So that's the third point, and that's what I mean when I say experience changes people. And of course, when I'm saying this, please be aware, when I'm saying this, I don't mean that if your child is getting up to haram, is doing something that's forbidden, doing the wrong thing, for us to say, oh, that's okay, experience changes them. No, we're talking about halal experiences, because some experiences aren't worth the cost. And this is an important part that I try and reinforce with people all the time. Some experiences, especially young people, some experiences are not worth the cost. Here we're talking about the halal experiences change people, and they will change your kid or your child, inshallah ta'ala. So let's bring it back to those 3 points. The first point was, one sec. People will learn from what they see you do. Your children are going to learn from what they see you do, how you're interacting with your own parents. That's how they'll learn to interact with you, what you say to them, how patient you are with them, so on and so forth. The way that you talk to other people, the way you go about your life. They're going to learn your akhlaq from your actions. That's why we say to people, who start to develop a motivation to learn about their deen, it's not enough for you to learn it from YouTube or from Facebook. They'll go onto this Facebook page that gives them daily reminders, and they think after a little while that, mashallah, that they've got this knowledge now. That's not enough. It's not enough. Even it's not enough for you to go to the bookstore, buy a few books, and start reading the books on your own. Why? Because when you spend time with the Sheikh, you take from her akhlaq. You take from the way that they interact with you, interact with other people. That's what they learn from. I can sit here via Zoom and teach everyone about akhlaq, all the different qualities of akhlaq, how important they are, and give them evidence from the Quran, evidence from the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I can do that for weeks and weeks. That's not going to teach them akhlaq unless they're sitting down with me and I'm interacting with them. They'll pick it up from my behavior. I picked it up from my mashayikh, from their behavior. And that's why we have Imam Malik, rahimahullah. When he was young, his mum used to send him to the Sheikh, Rabi'a ibn Abdul Rahman, rahimahullah. She used to send him to the Sheikh, and she would dress him up nicely. And I think this is a very appropriate example. She dressed him up nicely, and she'll put the tatayyub, so she'll put the perfume on for him, and so she'll make sure he's in this really nice, presentation, and then she'll say, go to Rabi'a. And she's giving him advice too. This is an important part of the preparation. Go to Rabi'a and take from وَخُذْ مِنْ أَدَبِهِ وَسَمْتِهِ قَبْلَ أَنْ تَأْخُذُ مِنْ عِلْمِهِ. Go to Rabi'a and take from his adab, his discipline, the way he is, his hayba, his presentation, and his akhlaq, before you take from his knowledge. That part of it is a very important part of the process. And then we look at Imam Malik, rahimahullah, when he gets older and he's teaching. He had such a reverence for the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that if he's asked about the hadith, he would not, and he was walking, he would not answer the hadith, he would not answer the question until he got prepared properly, did the tatayyub, prayed his raka'at, and then sat down for the majlis and did the tahadduth. Why? Because if you're mentioning the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's like you're with him. It's like he's with you. And that's why when we learn about that ayah in the Quran, لا ترفعوا أصواتكم فوق صوت النبي ولا تجهروا له بالقول. Do not raise your voice above the voice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This was a itab or an advice to the Sahaba that they should have a certain respect in the presence of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That we say that this is actually also relevant today. That we should be like this whenever the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is mentioned. That we give it our attention, we pay the proper respect and reverence. And so we have with relation to that, Imam Malik, what he learned from Rabi'a, he took from his actions and he implemented it in his actions, like he absorbed it into his own actions. So that's how we need to be with our children. They're going to learn from what we do. And even you want to send them to the Sheikh and you want to say, Sheikh, please talk to my son about this and this and this and this. Again, it's about what you do. It's about what the Sheikh does. And so keep that in mind. First one, people will learn from what you do. Second one, your children will change. We need to be acutely aware that our children are going to change. So many parents, they come to me and they're so surprised. They're surprised at the things that their children are getting into. They're shocked at the things their children are getting up to. The things that, you give your child a phone to keep on them because in case they get lost, they need to call their parents, in case they're going to be late, in case there's an emergency or whatnot. But you know what? Phones these days are not just for making phone calls. They're not just for calling your parents. There is so much you can do with a phone. And so parents will come to me, they're shocked about what their primary school kids have been doing on the phone. I'm talking primary school. I'm talking 10 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old, what they're doing on the phone. the way they're interacting with their peers, with their friends. You know, parents coming home, they're shocked about you know, what their children are doing in their teenage years, who they're hanging out with, how they're spending a lot of time on the streets. You know, they're shocked. So we need to get on top of this. You know, we need to be aware of it when he's trying to address it before it gets to that point. When it gets to that point, it gets a bit harder. It doesn't become impossible, but it gets a bit harder. So but please be aware your children will change. Number 3, experience changes people. How are we going to give our children an experience that's going to give them more maturity, give them a bigger sense of responsibility? One of the things that I've found has helped a lot of people is when we see families, they go and they spend a little while overseas. So their children, so what they do is they take their children overseas for a little while, a few months, maybe 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, you know, back to their homeland. And like the specific examples I have are the ones who go to Lebanon, but I'm sure it would be similar to others who have, you know, have a very cultural homeland. So where they live in their country of origin, it's very cultural. They go and they spend a bit of time there. I've found that the young people that I deal with who have done that in their past, mashallah, there's a level of maturity to them, sense of responsibility. They're a bit more switched on. So I think that's a good point. That's a good thing. So look for experiences that are going to positively impact your child. And you know what? You could also participate in it. It doesn't have to be child on their own, you and them. So 1, 2, and 3, quickly again, people will learn from what you do. Your children will change. Experiences change people. So those are the 3. So look, Brother Luqman, please stop me when you need to stop me. But
we are at that time that we need to take a break. We also have a few questions already coming through. So if you want to just conclude the talk, then we can. Okay.
All right. So so we'll leave it there, inshallah. I'll take a look at the chat just whilst I think the next part of the program goes on to see if there's any questions that come up there. If not, if I miss them, Brother Luqman, I'm happy for you to just ask them to me directly.
Question.
Yeah. So we can, and I'll answer to the best of my ability. We ask Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to help us to take the best of the lessons that have been the lessons that I have given forward today. We ask Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to help us to keep getting closer and closer to Him, and to help us to continue to be positive influences on our children and the people around us. أقول ما تسمعون وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Mohammad Trad, for the talk on how to make the most out of teenagers. And I think the key point there, as you started off the talk, and also the conclusion, is it comes back to the great examples that they see as they grow up in ourselves, in the people they interact with. And it doesn't go far from the akhlaq that shape their character. So there's a lot of questions that start to come through. But before we go to the questions, I would also like to thank those participants who aren't on Zoom, but following us on YouTube and Facebook. And you can always pop your question through, and we will try to accommodate it in the next session. But before we go to answering these questions, give us a bit of time for the Sheikh and myself to gather the questions. We will look at a video, and this is a video from Human Initiative on their program of the Qurban that's ongoing at the moment. For the committee, please play the video. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Pandemi adalah ujian bagi kita semua. Banyak dari saudara-saudara kita yang merasakan dampaknya. Ketahanan pangan terganggu, ekonomi jadi nggak stabil. Berkurban adalah syariat dari Allah untuk memperbaiki kondisi ini, menyelesaikan masalah-masalah sosial akibat pandemi. Nah, Human Initiative ngasih kita solusi berkurban yang tepat sasaran. Distribusinya sampai ke pelosok negeri. Selain harganya terjangkau, juga udah sesuai dengan protokol kesehatan. Yuk, bareng-bareng kita insya Allah kurban di Human Initiative. Alhamdulillah, tahun ini saya bareng dengan Human Initiative pengen ngajak teman-teman semuanya yuk berkurban di Human Initiative. Karena insya Allah kurban menguatkan hati di tengah pandemi.
Vậy này, vậy nên có số phần. Lu ngangko anak juang bawa di sini tak, anak ni mau mengandam. Mau balik ke sini dia. Baru ni bahasa dah sista 50, kota dibikin dah ali. Lah punya pemilik kami buat 20 pound, 10 pound. Bayi mina sabu, baru pemilik kami anu mili juga gini. Terima kasih. Marunong aku.
Inshallah. Just on that, thank you for that video. Just recap that this program.
Ibrahim mengajarkan kita apa arti ketaatan. Ismail mengajarkan kita apa makna keikhlasan. Insya Allah kurban kuniakan karenamu. Insya Allah kurban ikhlaskan hati. Ikhlaskan, insya Allah kurban dunia karenamu. Insya Allah kurban ku tujukan untukmu. Insya Allah kurban ku hantarkan padamu. Insya Allah kurban ku berbagi denganmu.
Mashallah. There's a few programs that Human Initiative have got there, as you could see in the two videos. And in the current pandemic situation, you could see that most of the distribution will be in Indonesia, and Indonesia, as our closest neighbor to Australia, is one country that has a lot of potential for the recipients of Qurban. And Human Initiative has got a special program for this year because of the pandemic, and not everybody is on the boat where they are as available or affordable to, they can afford to do a full Qurban. And if you cannot, but because of your circumstances, they also have the simple meat package, which is only $20, and that also gets distributed to the most in need. So any ways that you feel that you can participate with the Qurban this year, there's a few ways that Human Initiative is ready to help you with that. Excellent program for the next few days, inshallah. We should continue with the discussion or more of the Q&A. Sheikh Mohammad, there's few questions there. I don't know whether you are able to see the Q&A screen. If not, I can read it out to you. Probably should.
Is there a Q&A screen?
Yeah,
I'm
there's
just on the
couple of
regular
questions.
chat. I saw a few questions on the regular chat. Is that it?
Sure. Okay. Yes, there is.
So there's a very detailed question, and then there's a shorter question.
Yeah. So I can read the first question that was on the chat.
If you
That
can.
was the.
Yep.
So this is. I should probably. I could paraphrase it, but the main thing is here. As a lot of cultural backgrounds, we teach our kids Islamic values when they were little, and raise them, get them to madrasa and do the Quran class and all those things. And then when they turn 18, suddenly the rules of the Western society allows them to say, right, I'm independent, I can do what I like, and then they sort of turn away from all the what their parents have taught them. They decide not to do whatever. No, I'm independent, I can do what I like. Now, this is a challenge for many of us as parents, especially when we see our kids growing up, and then as soon as they're 18, they're basically an adult, and you're not supposed to dictate what they do anymore. That's the society in the West. So how do we get them back, or how do we still be able to sort of give them the support and try to maintain their fiqh, their iman?
That's
So
a very good
that's the
question.
first question.
And I think the second question is somewhat similar. So I might tackle them both together. So the second question was about what if the change that is occurring in them isn't in accordance with the Islamic values? How can we bring them back? So in relation to this, I just want to preface my answer by saying that there's no secret weapon to fix problems that you're having with your children. There's no secret switch or anything that you can just flip. There's no word that you can just utter and it'll just automatically change everything. It's a process and it takes effort, but keep in mind that you're not alone. And I know that sometimes there's a lot of shame that comes along with some of the things that our children get involved in, especially if it's drug related. So especially if it's both the culture and the society are against it, especially if it's that people can be really ashamed of their children getting involved in this kind of thing. And of course as well, like when it's like from a religious point of view, it's against like they're doing things that are against the deen, it can bring shame as well. But bear in mind that you're not alone. And sometimes people will better take advice from people who are not family And that's like, I think that's something that's, even after everything that I've spoken about today, to a degree, it's unavoidable. You know, until you've taught or instilled within your child that idea that you always got to have a particular reverence and respect for people older than them and for their parents in particular. But that's going to happen. So, like I often give the example of, you know, one of our mashayikh. He was telling us the story of his sheikh, who's also our sheikh as well. But he was saying that, like this particular matter, like it happens between whichever way of the relationship it is, like any member of the family, it can happen. So he's one of the most, my sheikh, the one that the story is being told about, he's one of the most revered sheikhs in Lebanon. But at the same time, other sheikh was telling us the story. He was saying, you know, he gets to the point, like even his mother was sick, she was ill, and it was Ramadan, and she would say to her son, my son, go ask the sheikh if I can break my fast. And her son is a sheikh as well. So the thing between family members, sometimes there's an added difficulty. But just remember that you're not alone. You're not alone. See if there's someone in the community that you can approach if there's a particular matter, there's something you want them to get involved, like that, something that needs some kind of an intervention, or even if it's just for advice. You know, if it's a proper sheikh who studied properly in the proper place, he's going to maintain your confidentiality. And at the end of the day, like if we see a problem and we don't try to address it, then it's going to become more embarrassing later. Like if it keeps getting worse, it will become more embarrassing later. So remember that you're not alone. There are people around who can potentially help if there's a situation. At the end of the day, we can't control what other people do. And you know, we talk about people wanting their independence and their freedom and all that when they become adults, and that it's a Western principle. But I think we need to look at this a bit more holistically, because regardless of which culture you come from, or which country you come from, regardless of which country you come from, when your child gets to a particular age, they're going to want to make decisions for themselves. They're going to want to make their own decisions. They're going to want to feel like they're in control of their lives. And that in and of itself is not wrong. But what we need to try and do, and what is within our hands, is to instill in them the tools that they need to make the right decisions. Like I can't, when I'm 80 years old and my child is 40 years old, still expect that my child is going to accept all my direction. Like things don't work that way. And it's especially, you'll see that a lot with boys. They'll want to try and assert themselves and want to try and show that, hey, look, this is me, this is what I put forward, this is, you know, and I think that's kind of normal as well. But again, like we want to give them the tools that they need to make the right decisions when they start having these thoughts, because we can't fight. Like Islam doesn't teach us, our deen doesn't teach us to fight human nature. It teaches us how to tame it, how to put it in the right place, how to send it in the right direction, send the energy in the right direction. And so when a young person is reaching an age where they want to try and assert themselves, they want to try and come up with, you know, present their own ideas, make their own decisions, I think that's normal. Like it's normal that this happens, but again, we just need to instill within the tools that they need. I'll give a few examples, okay? One example is Salah. If we are teaching, and I'm going to try and, in this example, I'm going to try and implement a lot of the lessons that I've given, okay, throughout the talk. So one of the examples is Salah. So from a young age, we're teaching our kids Salah, but we're not just teaching it to them. We're showing them. I'm showing my child how to make wudu. I'm the one who's teaching my child how to recite the Fatiha. I'm the one who's teaching my child, of course, if I know how to recite it properly. I'm the one who's teaching my child everything they need to say in their Salah. My child is seeing me pray. My child sees me pray. Because remember, they're learning from what I do. And one of the common practices that we used to see is that when the adults or the parents, they'll pray behind closed doors in their own homes. or they'll do all of their salawat, the fard and the sunnah, in the musalla or in the masjid. But then when is your child going to see you pray? When are they going to say, okay, this is something that we learn to do, and we're going to do, and we've got to do it growing up. That's something, salah, it's something that stays with a person. I've seen people who they become quite distant from the deen, and they get involved in haram acts. Even some of the guys who ended up in jail. But salah is something that didn't leave them. And you never know. So you might feel like you've lost your child at some point, but you never know that whatever good deed or good thing that they've held onto might be what saves them later on. At some point, it might be what brings them back. And so we've seen people who the only thing that they were holding onto was salah, and then they came back. They came back through the salah. So you teach your child how to pray, you show them how to pray, they see you pray, they pray with you. One time I saw someone in Musalla, a young kid, like 4 years old, 5 years old, standing next to him, praying with him, like copying his dad's praying. And I saw the in front of me, and I'm like, I want to talk to him once he's done. So I came, after he finished, I came and gave salam to him, Assalamu alaikum, how you doing? But I just want to say, that's a beautiful thing you're doing right there. And I said to him, I still remember, I'm in my early 30s, I still remember when I was that age and I was praying next to my dad. I still remember that. And so like these things that we instill in our kids from the young age, inshallah, they're going to benefit them even with all the negative things that are around them that are pulling them towards haram. So that's something to keep in mind. Wherever you can, try and instill more of these good qualities in them, the qualities of akhlaq. I remember it was even before as much before I became a sheikh, being honest became something that was very important to me. Being honest, not being known as a liar. But what helped me to take this quality upon myself, one, that my parents did not like being untruthful at all. It's something that they detested. Two, it was seen as something that was a great quality to have. Someone doesn't lie, someone who can be trusted. Someone who, when your friends are saying, they're trying to swear your other friends to secrecy, they look at you and they know that you're going to maintain their confidentiality because they trust you. They know you can be trusted. And so there were factors in my environment that helped support this particular quality. And so there's a lot that can be said about that, but we can say, try to make sure the environment's good around your kid, like around your child as they're growing up, in their teenage years. Try and get them involved in things that, one, they're going to enjoy, and two, it's going to bring them to their deen, because we're often only giving them one or the other. Either it's really fun, but it doesn't bring you to your deen, or it brings you close to your deen. It's not to bring you close to your deen, but it's not fun at all. It's not enjoyable at all. They don't connect with it. They don't feel a relationship to it. The haram looks so nice. We're competing with something that looks so interesting. It looks really interesting. It looks really desirable. And so we want that when we're trying to engage the young people, we're engaging with something that they connect with, they can identify with. And it doesn't help for us to keep fighting the idea that they're going to want their independence one day, that they're going to want to be feel like they're making their own decisions one day. So we don't want to fight that, but instead we try and put it in a halal frame. So it's like, at the end, you know what? We want to give you responsibilities. And we recognize when they start to do things that are more mature, right? But we always instill in them that doesn't matter how independent I am. And again, this is something we take from our parents. It doesn't matter how independent I am or how free I am, I'm always a Muslim. And so at the end of the day, I'm always bound by the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I see that my parents strictly hold on to this, then I'm going to hold on to this. Because I'm going to see that what does independent mean? It means, I make my own decisions, but at the same time, I stay within the deen. I stay within the confines of the deen. I think that's an important aspect of it, because we don't you're going to fight a losing battle. You will be fighting a losing battle if you're trying to fight the idea that they're going to be independent. And
yeah,
we want them.
I think
Yeah, go for it.
cover the main points on that. And it is, as you said at the start, you do have to have this positive attitude towards your kids and your children, that they are going to grow up. And I think one of the challenges that you mentioned is number 2 there, where your children will change in life, and therefore you also have to change along with them in how you interact with them. I think that's the point that you raise. And have a trust that at the point where they think they're independent, you are still trying to be there with them.
And experiences change people. Third one.
Excellent. And the experience will change them. We do have about 4 more questions here, Sheikh. We have about 10 minutes, and there's a polling at the end as well. So I might try to scan through this pretty quickly. Hopefully we can try to capture it. So the next one is, what should a parent do when a kid over 16 years old express his or her intention to convert or to be agnostic? So this is going away from the teachings of Islam, basically. So,
it's a very appropriate question. We see it a lot, and I'll even give you an example of my time at Microsoft. So, like, we deal with a lot of customers, right? And of course, like, part of our job is to be personable, and get to know the person, get to know what their needs are, so we can offer them the right solution, the right software and hardware solution for their needs. And you see people who, their name is a Muslim name. It's a Muslim first name, it's a Muslim surname, but they don't identify as Muslim. And it's really a shame that we see that, but you know what? It's a reality, it's happening. And we can't afford to be in denial about the fact that this is happening. So I think it is a very appropriate question. I would also say that not everyone is well equipped to deal with to sit down and communicate with a person who's doing this. You might risk pushing them away further, which is something that can happen. But one of the things that we try to put forward all the time is, have you understood your deen enough before making this decision? So you have a bit of an idea of what it means to be agnostic. We have a bit of an idea about what it means to be an atheist, right? But do you have a proper idea of what it means to be a Muslim? Because you're deciding to leave something, right? And so, like, I think that's a very important question to put forward. But you need someone who can give them that right guidance to answer the question properly, because for a number of these people, they're moving away from perhaps a cultural norm that's not necessarily part of the religion. Like, that can happen. And so we don't want to risk, identifying this cultural norm as part of the religion, and then they've left it because of this, because they think it's part of the religion. And so that's something to be aware of. Another thing to be aware of is that we're clear in our deen. So, like, so on the one hand, we're not super rigid and strict, but on the other hand, we're not too lenient. Our deen is clear. It's supposed to be clear, and then we give the clear advice. Unfortunately, we have no further authority than that. But it's like I said, find out, have them reflect on, do I actually know my deen well enough? Do I know Islam well enough for me to say I don't want it? I think that's a very important starting question. So if anyone is going through this, or you know someone who is going through this, that's the question you need to start with. How much do you know of Islam that you're making this decision? I am a Muslim of my own free will, and I'm sure everyone here is a Muslim of their own free will. They're not Muslim because they're forced to be Muslim. So we're Muslim of our own free will. So what is it that's so amazing about Islam that has caused me to make this decision? And so if I have a good awareness of this, then I can, inshallah, help this person, right? But so I think that's where we start. Some people are going to be stubborn. Some people are going to, they've already closed their hearts to the idea, and we can't do much about that, right? But the people who actually, they've honestly made that decision, like, it's an honest decision because they're trying to find what is the truth, right? Because as Muslim, I'm a truth seeker. I'm a seeker of the truth. Seeking the truth led me to Islam, right? So if they are sincere and this is a result of searching for the truth, then that question will help them. How much do you know about Islam that you've made this decision? Okay, and let's try and look at it like this. Okay, like in this particular way. Outside of that, I know it's very difficult. Try and find someone who can actually explain Islam, like who has a capacity to explain Islam well. It's hard, even if you are a practicing Muslim. Even if you're a practicing Muslim, you've grown up with Islam, everyone around you is Muslim, you might still find it hard to explain what it means to be a Muslim. And this we saw this firsthand when we had our first lesson in Usul al-Da'wah. And that was, what does it mean to be Muslim? And we all had to try and work out what we're going to say in response to that question. But that's where we start. We start, okay, so after in making this decision, how much do you actually know about your deen that you feel like it's not the right thing? Yeah, so I'll get to the next questions. If you want further elaboration, we can maybe go into.
Sheikh Mohammad, for the questions. We still have a few questions. However, the time is gaining on us. Okay. We have about 5 minutes, and we have about 3 other programs to conclude with.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that.
With dua as well. So no, I think it just says how important this topic is that we're having tonight. And what I will do is give the opportunity for all these questions that we have received to be answered on Facebook. And I think,
of course.
It'll
give me a chance to organize a more concise answer as well.
Absolutely. So, inshallah, we will wrap up the discussion, but we will continue with the next program. So, again, thank you very much, Sheikh Mohammad Trad, for the talk tonight. I could conclude the key points, and I'll just bring back the first 3 points that you brought up at the start of our talk this evening. The 3 points are, the most important part. You start off with our kids will look at examples in their parents to start off with. So whatever you see when they turn up as a teenager and adult, and if you see something that you dislike, there's more than likely those examples have come from yourself or within the people that they interact mostly. So that's part number 1. Second, as kids, they will start to grow and they will change. As they grow from younger kids to younger teenager and then young adults, they face different circumstances, different situation, and they will change. So the only thing the parents can do is they need to change with them in how they interact, how they need to respect their space and all those things. So point number 2. And then point number 3 is experience changes people, or in the Arabic proverb, it's experience help people to grow. Yeah.
The Arabic proverb was something else, but it's the experience to change people is just advice to get your kids involved with more adult related stuff. It helps them to mature. It helps them to
get
mature.
The life experiences with your guidance. So inshallah, those are the 3 points. And I think the last point, which is a very important point to conclude all this, that if you are having all these difficulties, you are not alone.
You're not, of course.
And refer to the mashayikh in your area or that you know. Although there's a lot of technology these days with YouTube and whatnot, they don't always give you all the answers. And the best
100%.
place
Sorry,
is to talk
just a
to
very
your
important
mashayikh.
point. Yeah, very important point on that. It's important that you're engaging. That if you're seeking the advice of a sheikh, that it's a sheikh who is in your environment and in the environment of your child, because they will know what they're going through. And I'll give a very quick example on this. Is that I'm really grateful that I had the experience that I had at Microsoft, because I was in the city and I wasn't in control of my own time and my own breaks. I was to a certain degree. And so I had to manage how I was going to pray and how I was going to make my prayers on time with the 5 daily salawat and all that. And sometimes it's easy to lose that. It's easy to lose track of it. And so I'm actually really grateful to Allah first and foremost, and anyone involved in making that experience possible for me, that I got first-hand experience in the challenges people face in maintaining their 5 daily prayers whilst they are working. So please, with regards to my sheikh, don't contact a sheikh who's in the Middle East who is in Saudi Arabia asking for advice in relation to your son, because there's going to be a disconnect. He's not going to understand what they're going through.
Have the local content and the local knowledge, what your kids are going through. So if you are overseas, try to find your local sheikh that knows the circumstances of what the upbringing of your kids are. So inshallah, I conclude with that. Any shortcoming has come from me. Before we end the program, there is a survey or polling. Again, for those who are new to Zoom, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there is polls, which is 3 bars, and the polls has been popped up there. It's on your screen. Just answer that. There's only a couple of questions. So if you're happy, or this is to help the organizers to improve in future programs. So if can you complete that? We'll give you, about 30 seconds, a minute to complete, fill it up, and then after that.
It needs to be now.
Yep.
Can I complete it too?
Yes, please.
If it's asking about me, I probably shouldn't complete it.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't want to skew the results.
I think you should stay off this one, Sheikh.
Yeah, I'll stay off this poll, inshallah.
سلام 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 جعلنا السلام شيارا لنا وباسم السلام اتقينا هنا لتجعل يا رب أيامنا على هذه الأرض بشرى السلام. Peaceful, 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 peace. Peaceful, 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 peace. We made peace a symbol of ours. In the name of peace we gather here now. Oh Lord, please make these days of ours on this earth filled with peace. Salamun, 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 salam. Salamun, 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 salam. Salamun, salamun, salam.
Okay, I think we've got to the end of the polling, and I thank you for the participation and your responses on our program today. Inshallah, this will. Should we share the program, the results here?
I don't know. It's up to you. Isn't it? Should it be more for your own purposes?
Yes, and it's for the committee actually. So we'll just keep that. And I again appreciate the responses that you have.
I'm trying not to look at the results because I don't want to put under undue pressure.
That's okay. Again, we appreciate the program that you have, the topic that you have brought through. It's not an easy topic, and as parents, I'm a parent as well. The challenges are immense, but the some of the recipes that you have provided us this evening is a reminder on how we can maneuver through bringing up great teenagers. And create the better generation in the future, inshallah. Before we conclude, yes?
And please, if you're in my community and you have any questions, would like support, anything, feel free to get in touch, inshallah.
Okay, inshallah, we will. Okay, that's the results. Just go through that pretty quickly. So we'll take this on board, and then we thank all of you for your contribution this evening. We will conclude with dua, and inshallah, Sheikh Mohammed, would you be able to just lead with dua?
How long do you want the dua to be?
You don't want to get too far, but I think we've got about a minute, inshallah. 1 minute.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم إنا نستعينك ونستغفرك ونستهديك ونتوب إليك ونؤمن بك ونتوكل عليك ونثني عليك الخير كله، نشكرك ولا نكفرك ونخلع ونترك من يفجرك. اللهم إياك نعبد ولك نصلي ونسجد وإليك نسعى ونحفد، نرجو رحمتك ونخاف عذابك، إن عذابك الجد بالكفار ملحق. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت، فإنك تقضي بالحق ولا يقضى عليك، وإنه لا يعز من عاديت ولا يذل من واليت، تباركت ربنا وتعاليت. اللهم لا تدع لنا ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا مريضا إلا شفيته ولا مظلوما إلا نصرته. اللهم حبب إلينا الإيمان وزينه في قلوبنا وكره إلينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان. اللهم اهدنا واهد بنا واجعلنا قدوة لمن اهتدى. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. Oh Allah, help us to maintain our iman on these days where it seems like holding on to our iman is like holding on to a burning ember. Oh Allah, and help our children to maintain their iman in these days as well, where the ma'asi, the things that are haram, look so appealing and they're all around us. Oh Allah, help us to save ourselves first and save our families too, and help us to understand our responsibilities towards our families and help them to understand their responsibilities in terms of their deen. Oh Allah, help us bring ease to us after suffering and bring ease to us after difficulty and hardship. Oh Allah, help us to take the most of the discussion that has happened, that has taken place tonight, inshallah ta'ala, and help us to or open up for us a solution to whatever problems we might be facing at the moment with our families. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Alhamdulillah. With that dua, we conclude the program this evening. And before we go, I would like to thank the committee at Human Initiative for organizing this program. And a special thanks to Sheikh Mohammad Trad for allowing his time in preparation and conveying the talk this evening and answering all the questions. And I think you still have a bit more to answer, a few more questions after this. And before we go, we also like to just remind all the participants to support the programs of Human Initiatives, specifically with the Qurban that's upcoming. There's a lot of programs that they are rolling out, and also would like to try to feed as many people as they can through the program. So again, your support with the programs for the Qurban, you can contact Human Initiatives, and whichever ability that you may have, may Allah give you the ease and the ability to help with the Qurban program, inshallah. I would conclude this evening's program. Anything that was right has come from Allah. Any shortcoming is of ourselves, and I ask forgiveness for any shortcoming in running the program to this evening. Wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum salam.
I return to the Human Initiative organizers if you got anything else to say. Otherwise, we can conclude. And I think there's still a chat to be left for the next 5-10 minutes, I think.
سلام 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 جعلنا السلام شيارا لنا وباسم السلام اتقينا هنا Hey little bird, so way up high, light up the sky with your colored design. Tell me who made you and I, me to walk and you to fly. The little bird said, that's my Lord. The little bird said, that's my Lord. The little bird said, that's my Lord. Allah, the creator of us all. Allahu Akbar, our creator. There's no one greater than Allah. So why do we stand tall, too proud to recognize what's right before our eyes? Signs from our Lord. Hey alligator, lane so still. Who's your maker? By whose will? Do you crawl and do you swim? Who controls everything? The alligator said, that's my Lord. The alligator said, that's my Lord. The alligator said, that's my Lord. Allah, the creator of us all. Hey, king of the jungle, the mighty lion, top of the food chain, no denying. But who is the one that you rely on? Life or death, who is deciding? The lion said, that's my Lord. The lion said, that's my Lord. The lion said, that's my Lord. Allah, the creator of us all. Allahu Akbar, our creator. There's no one greater than Allah. So why do we stand tall, too proud to recognize what's right before our eyes? Signs from our Lord.